Hey, let's get this right out of the way, right off the top. New York State does still not have a budget deal in place. In fact, we're now getting to the point where lawmakers may have to pass another extender tomorrow in order to make sure the government keeps running and to keep those paychecks going out. While we follow that, though, we are getting an idea of changes to expect in regards to bail reform in the budget. The 2019 law that mostly ended cash bail requirements for most nonviolent crimes has certainly been controversial from the start. Governor Hochul promised to take another look at the law, and now legislative leaders have outlined a few changes that they say will be part of this budget deal. That includes making more gun charges eligible for judges to set bail, as well as hate crimes. The Wall Street Journal reports that under the changes, judges will still have to pick the, quote, least restrictive option to make sure that a defendant comes back to court, but judges will also be able to consider factors like the defendant's criminal history and also the harm caused to people or groups by the alleged crime. In just a bit, we'll hear from an advocate who says, leave bail reform alone. First, though, joining us live is Erie County District Attorney John Flynn. Great to have you back on. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mike.
So when we asked you on this morning, we thought maybe we'd have some specifics because we thought maybe we'd have a budget agreement by now. That's still not the case. There's work going on in Albany right now. But we have these kind of bits of info that have leaked out, and it really does seem like this bail reform is going to make it into the final budget. What is your reaction to what we've heard? Do these reported changes solve any of the problems that you think the bail reform law caused?
Well, it's my understanding that these criminal justice matters are what is holding up the budget. And, while I don't want to be responsible for holding up the budget here, I do think that it's important that we as district attorneys get our message across to those in Albany, which we have been doing. So, I have said from the beginning when Governor Hochul put out her 10-point plan last week that I was very much in favor of that her 10-point plan, and specifically her parts about making public safety a factor when judges determine bail, adding more offenses for bail eligible qualifications, and the changes that she wants to make on repeat offenders. I think that those three things are very important, and I know that she is fighting hard for those in Albany right now.
And Governor Hochul talked about hearing from police and prosecutors as she was kind of working through that plan. It's still to be seen how much of it will actually end up in the budget deal. It's mostly downstate Democrats, people in your own party, who have kind of held a lot of this up. Where do you think the compromise is there and how this is ultimately going to play out?
Well, I think we can compromise on discovery, which is not directly linked to bail. So I think that in the discovery world, and for your viewers here, discovery basically is information and paperwork that I have to turn over to the defense attorneys. I'm hopeful we can get some agreement on that. I'm also hopeful that we can get some money for a discovery and for bail, which was not put in back in 2019. I'm not so sure, quite frankly, Mike, about bail itself. You're exactly right. There is a growing orchestra that's getting louder and louder every day from mainly downstate Democrats, those on the progressive side, quite frankly, who are saying, let's not change bail at all. I had one assembly member tell me, why would I want to change something that is 95% working? And, I was taken aback for a minute. We can debate on whether the 95% is correct or not. I probably think it's a little lower, but I'm a reasonable guy. Let's say that 95% is a correct number. Well, then why wouldn't you want to fix the 5% that's broken? And again, that's a question that I ask all the downstate legislators. Let's fix the 5% that's broken.
We have seen, pushback not just from these downstate Democrats and certain lawmakers, but certainly there have been some kind of advocacy groups out there. They've had events at the Capitol, protests, news conferences and such. I want to read a quote that we got earlier today from one of those groups saying that if they roll back these changes, that it will worsen the humanitarian crisis in jails, coerce more guilty pleas from innocent New Yorkers, and lead to no public safety improvements. So how would you respond to those people who I think are honest in their conviction and in believing that this will unfairly continue to punish poorer people who are going to stay locked up even though they haven't been convicted of anything. How do you have that conversation with these groups, and I guess maybe convince them that you are focused on that 5% and not undoing all of that?
Correct. I agree with that comment in the sense that those who are charged with misdemeanors are not going to have any change at all. So the argument that was there, quite frankly, 3 years ago, where poor people are being kept in on bail, doesn't apply anymore, really, because all the misdemeanors are non-qualifying and are gone. With regard to her three comments, you're going to increase the jail population. That's not true, because the majority of the jail population pre-bail reform was for people who were in custody pre-trial on misdemeanors. Those are all gone now. So that argument is out the window. No one is going to force anyone to plead guilty without having the paperwork, all right? Again, I agree. Pre-discovery, pre-bail reform, that did happen, but mainly on misdemeanor cases. On felony cases, you're going to get the paperwork, you're going to get the evidence against you, so no one is going to plead guilty without knowing what the evidence is against them. So again, with all due respect to my friends on the advocate side, they're just wrong. They're wrong that public safety has not been affected by some of these reforms that were done in 2019. They have affected public safety. Let's say it's the 5% that is affecting public safety. Again, Michael, let's fix the 5%.
And again, at this hour, negotiations continuing in Albany, although the latest reporting that we're hearing from there is that they have settled on this bail reform. We'll see what actually comes out of it and when they decide to tell the rest of us the deals that they've made. John Flynn is the Erie County District Attorney, long fought for changes to the bail reform law. We appreciate you coming in and sharing your views. Good to see you. All right, so we spoke today also with one of those local groups that spent years advocating for bail reform. The Partnership for Public Good is concerned about the rollbacks, arguing that, again, more bail would mean more people forced to take plea deals if they didn't want to, just to get out of jail. Policy fellow and attorney Miles Gresham made this case to us earlier today.
But we have to remember, in America, in this justice system, no one is guilty of a crime that they're accused of until they're proven guilty, right? I think a lot of what the public need is, or what the public desire is, unfortunately comes from a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding of what's already in the law. And so we're making changes that are a bit drastic. So again, yeah, hate crimes are horrible things. But if someone is falsely accused of a hate crime, right, now that person is going to have to deal with, paying bail to get out of jail, even though at trial, the case might, fall apart entirely.
We asked Miles what changes would advocates support to try to help deal with the increase in violence and also some of the anecdotal instances of people getting released and then committing serious crimes.
But we had decades of data before bail reform was implemented, and now barely 2 years after bail reform is implemented, without any data to show that bail reform is to blame for any spike in violent crimes, hate crimes, subway crimes, or anything of the sort. So I hope that they actually take the time to look at what's in the law already and what unused powers police and prosecutors and judges have to arrest people, to prosecute them, and to keep them in jail before we roll back bail reform and end up hurting the very people that bail reform was intended to protect.
And so we'll wait to see what reform changes do come out of the budget deal in Albany again that has not yet been finalized.